Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be a 4-position tier list for patch 7.35D. But before we get into the video, I just want to let you guys know that I'm doing replay reviews on stream every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Twitch, which is linked down below in the description. If you're a newer player or a player basically below 4K MMR and you want me to review one of your replays and give you advice, you can go to my Patreon down below in the description and sign up, or you can just go to my Twitch and subscribe there. Every supporter can request at least one replay every month, and I'll also be playing games with the community on those streams as well. So I hope to see you guys there, and with that out of the way, let's get back to the video. And like I said in the other videos, I'm pretty sure this patch is going to be around for a while, so we're kind of stuck with this meta, and honestly, now that I'm looking at this, it looks like there's like a billion heroes here, so I'll kind of go through these. I will try to be quick on some of them because there's like, I feel like half of the heroes in the game are in this 4-position, because 4-position really is this role that's just expanded recently, because you're seeing, you know, traditional 4-positions that have always played in that role. Those are still viable in a lot of ways, but then you're seeing a lot of these new 4-positions, like former mids that are now 4-positions, and former even like carries that are playing 4-position, because like carry from the 4-position has been so popular. It's been something that I've been saying for like the last 6 months or so. But now we'll jump into the S tier, and the first hero is Tiny, and this hero is basically a very good traditional 4-position that plays mid sometimes. It's just not as popular mid right now. It's pretty good mid. You can still definitely play it. It was on the mid tier list, but it's not like high up there. It's really popular as a 4, pretty much exclusively as a 4 right now. It was picked in the Elite League like a ton as a 4-position, and in ESL now it's getting some play as well. So it's just very good, and it's because this hero, the laning stage isn't like amazing by any means, but the toss is extremely annoying. Like if you can get in the right position and you can toss enemies back into your offlaner, you can just do insane amounts of damage. And then as you level up, obviously your avalanche and your toss early on, like once you hit 6, 7, 8, you're doing insane burst damage. You can gank mid, you can just kill people full to 0 before they get much HP or many items. This here's just really good for all the same reasons that Tiny is good. And then because, you know, as a 4-position, you can get more items. This hero scales really well and has like the space and the ability to get items. His farm isn't like insane, you know, his farming abilities, like you have to spend a lot of mana to farm, but then with the tree, you can do pretty well farming, and you can also farm heroes. So it's like you have kind of both options. You're probably going blink first, then you have many different item builds. You can kind of go defensive, you can go offensive, that kind of stuff. But Tiny's really doing the things that Tiny has always done from the 4-position. It's just really popular right now. And then next we have Hoodwink, and Hoodwink I think got nerfed actually recently, or Maelstrom got nerfed as well, and so because of that this hero's not like insanely broken like it was, but it's still S tier because it still does everything you want it to do. You're still buying Maelstrom, you're still going for Gleipnir, maybe you're going for a Yules, maybe you're not going like straight right click with Daedalus like 3rd item, but still you can even do that, and it's not completely grief because you have a stun, you have an escape, you have a insane slow that breaks. Like you have all these other tools at your disposal that don't really require you to buy items, so why not buy items that allow you to farm quicker and also do more damage in the late game? And it's really just that straightforward and that simple. And then the shard is pretty good as well. The axe is not something people usually buy unless it's like giga late game and you'd almost rather be going for damage, but this hero can also go for like defensive items, like I said, Yules or the Solar Crest, and you can go for those kinds of things as well if you really need to, if you feel like you can't afford to go for the Maelstrom. But honestly, you're probably going Maelstrom first every single game. That's just what you do on this hero, and like I said, it's totally not griefing. And then next we have Batrider, and this hero is extremely popular in high MMR pubs and pro pubs, and just in pro games in general. Like this is a support hero now. But just the way they've changed these spells over time, I feel like they keep changing it. Every big patch, you get a big Batrider change. But now with the way Sticky Napalm works, and with the way Flame Break works and Firefly, like you have these different options to do stuff. It's not just all about like, you know, stacking Sticky Napalm and then Fireflying on people. You can straight up go for like more Flame Break and Firefly and just skip Sticky Napalm altogether. Like that's definitely an option. I think that's what makes this hero able to be more of a support now, and because you're getting a lot of items on support as a 4-position, like you just kind of do the same thing that you would do from mid or off lane, but now you're a 4, and it doesn't really matter that much that you're just kind of going in, picking off one hero, bringing them back and killing them. Like that's not that big of a deal, where if you do that as a mid or a, you know, an off lane, it feels like you wasted your entire kit for one kill. And yes, that can be good, good, but sometimes, you know, you might not even kill them. They might have some counterplay to that, or it just feels like, okay, I did that, but now I'm completely useless, and I'm like the second, third most farmed hero in the game, and now what do I do? So I'm really relying on my team to do everything else for the rest of the fight. But here, you can do all that, and you're the priority hero. You know, you have 3 other cores that can do everything for you. And that's really why Bat Rider is so good right now, along with the laning stage and like these other abilities that you can actually skill early on. So that's Bat Rider. And then lastly, we have Rubik. And the reason why I say Rubik is kind of in a tier as well with Bat Rider is because I think this hero is more popular in the pro level pubs and like pro games, because I do think it takes some skill, and I do think you have to have the right matchups and the right spells to steal, and you have to be kind of good with the hero. Like, I don't think it's just a default, oh, I pick this hero, and there's just like these innate things about it that are good. Yes, the telekinesis is good. Yes, the Fade Bolt is good for like harassing and securing last hits and stuff in lane, but it can be one of those things where a Rubik on your team really feels kind of like annoying to have, because it doesn't do all that much unless it's stealing a ton of spells and doing a lot of stuff in the team fights, because you know, there has to be, if there's any other gaps in your team, which obviously you're going to be picking like first. I mean, I get that. So it's not really something that you can do much because, you know, supports go first. But still, if you have a Rubik and like another range support that doesn't do too much or doesn't stun, like let's say you have like Rubik and I don't know, like Dazzle or like Silencer, like that doesn't really feel good. That honestly feels like 2 terrible supports, and that'll happen sometimes. But if you have a Rubik and like another melee support or something like that, or some other hero with a stun, that can feel a lot better. And you have like other initiation heroes where this hero can just afford to sit in the back and not really cast as many defensive spells, but just be very offensive in nature. It can be very good. But again, it is kind of matchup dependent, and honestly, it does take a decent amount of skill and ability. But if you practice it, you can get very, very good. So that is the S tier. Now we're going to move on to A tier. First, we have Bounty Hunter here. He is just an overall good 4 position. He's kind of playing that core from the 4 position, but it's not as risky in terms of like playing it off lane, because he's a little bit awkward, like I talked about in the off lane tier list. He's just kind of awkward sometimes, because if he can't like run in and pick off the supports and people focus him down, it just feels bad. But Bounty as a 4 position, it's not really that big of a deal if all you really do is track people in fights, and then you really look for your opening and kind of go around to the back line and kill maybe 1 support. Like if that's all you're contributing, that's actually pretty good for a 4 position. And that's really, you know, there's not much else you can do in the game. Like it's not really that big of a deal if that's like how the game state has become. Yes, it'd be ideal if you're running around harassing the enemy in the jungle, killing them early. Like these are all things you can do. You can rush, you know, certain items to just make you very, very good, like the phylactery and that kind of stuff, which is probably what you'll do. You go like boots into phylactery. That can be one of those things that just snowballs the game, and that's definitely an option. But like I said, it doesn't feel as bad when you are just kind of this track bot. That's not as big of a deal, especially because that helps you come back in the game if you are losing. Then we have Nyx Assassin. The one thing about this hero is the laning stage is kind of crap. You just have a stun. That's really all you do. And you have like decent regen. So when you do have like a lane where you're getting harassed a lot, you can kind of regen out of that a little bit. But otherwise, your like right click is super bad. You don't really have other spells that do very much. Like, yeah, you have the stun and then the carapace, but like level 1 or 2 carapace is absolutely terrible. The real thing that you're playing this hero for is that hopefully you survive the laning stage, and then you can get some space on the map to farm, and then once you hit 6, you just go around the map blowing people up, just ganking them and just killing them and like one-shotting them. But usually you need someone to pair with you to do those ganks early, and then once you get to that 15, 20, 25 minute mark, and hopefully you've gotten some farm, hopefully you have some items that just do even more spell damage, and from there you just start one-shotting people, and like the enemy is just so annoyed because they have to stick together and they have to have sentries like everywhere they go. Otherwise, you're just going to die. Like that is just straight up how it works with Nyx Assassin. And again, as the 4 position support, you don't really have to care if you like waste an ult or if you like go in and they kind of pick you off a few times with a sentry. Like it's going to happen. You're just like, oh, well, I made some space. And really just by putting pressure on the map like that, you're making them group up. You're like putting fear into their hearts, and they're like, they can't do anything. They're so scared of the map because they just feel like a Nyx Assassin is just going to come kill them. I know when I'm playing against this hero, it's so annoying. Like you just feel like whenever you're kind of away from your team, you're like, Nyx is just right there, isn't he? He's going to kill me. And that just pretty much happens all the time. It's very, very annoying. And then I'm going to put Nature's Prophet up here. I hate to say it, but this hero is pretty good. I kind of wanted to rank it lower in the other tier list that I did previously. And honestly, probably like a few months ago, a few patches ago, it was probably S tier because it was so annoying when it first came out and they changed the sprout to do damage. But legitimately, this hero is still good despite some nerfs and things like that. You can just straight up carry from the forward position. Now, people are buying Quelling Blade, like people understand how to play against this hero a little bit, but it's still insane. Like you can still gank lanes 3v1, 3v2 sometimes, and then just TP right back to the lane you were just in, so it's like you are barely ever gone. Like it's very, very good and dynamic if you can take advantage of that. I will say it is like team play in some ways though. You need to play around your team, you need to be ganking, you need to be effective on the map, you need to take advantage of what this hero does, otherwise it can feel useless, so just keep that in mind. Then we have Techies, just all around good support right now, good magic damage. The stun was nerfed like 6 months or so back when it was really powerful, but people kind of stopped playing it altogether. It went like way down on the list, and then it's kind of come back up to popularity because people realize like, oh wait, this hero is actually still pretty good. It just does all the same things Techies has always done since they changed it, and now you can just jump in, burst people down, put a bunch of mines after you stun them, and they just like blow up, and that's something you can definitely do. You can also like mine areas, which makes it even worse for people to push high ground and stuff like that, take control of map areas. That's still a possibility on Techies. Just all around a decent support, plus that right click damage and that range is insane in lane. Then we have Lion. Lion is good for the same reasons that he's been good for a while now. I know they did nerf the shard, they did nerf the mana drain, but it's still very good. It still does a lot of the same things. It's just not as insanely OP and broken, but you still have the stun, you still have the hex, and you can still give mana to your allies. You can still, drain mana from people in the lane and like do damage to them. It's still extremely annoying. You still have BKB on your shard, so it does all those same things. Just the numbers are nerfed, so it's not like giga broken. Then we have Shadow Demon, just not a very popular support in like most MMRs. This is really like a high level MMR pick, but it is very good in specific matchups where you want to make illusions of, friendly allies like a Luna or something like that, like a Medusa, or there's some hero on the enemy team that you want to make illusions of. That can be very, very good. And then also if you have like something you need to purge and break and stuff like that, Shadow Demon is very good for that. If there's just like one hero you need to put your ult on and just like, okay, they're going to die because of this, that can be extremely, extremely effective. Then we have Gyro. This is kind of just all in on that missile build, kind of memey and spammy and annoying, but it definitely works, and the ult is definitely better than it used to be since they changed it a few months back. So that makes this hero definitely viable, pretty good. I've seen it honestly own in some games. Like you can play this hero as a support and just destroy the lane like 1v2. It's almost like an Undying in that way. It just feels that way, where like if you have the correct matchup and you know what you're doing and you're positioning yourself correctly, you can just absolutely destroy people with this hero. The one thing I will say is like once you get into the later portion of the game, it can feel a little bit awkward. It can feel not as good because you're not really transitioning into that many items. You kind of just buy shard at 15 minutes and then go around clicking missile on people. That's like literally what you do. And then after that, like, I mean, I guess you could, get more magic damage items or get like Dagon or something or E-Blade. But like, is that really that big of a deal? Is that really going to help you scale that much? That's the only problem with this hero. It doesn't scale as much into late game as some of these other heroes that are like even doing magic damage like Nyx or whatever. Then we have Spearbreaker, just overall really good hero if you need like, not a discount Tiny, but you need somebody to go in like Tiny, but you just want to be charging people around the map. If you know what you're doing, you can honestly own with this hero. Like you can just straight up win games solo on Spearbreaker, but you can also sometimes feed and just like do nothing. So you have to be careful not to feed off cooldown. But if your team knows what they're doing and you're charging the right people and you're playing relatively safely, then you can really destroy games. And the other thing is that even though this hero plays offlane sometimes, it's kind of like a bounty in the same way where like you're playing the 4-position Spearbreaker, so you can just charge waves, you can still farm in a similar way, but it's not as big of a deal when you charge in and you die. They blow a bunch of spells to kill you because you're so hard to you're so hard to catch, you have insane status resistance. And so that's just good. It's a good feeling as a support when they waste everything to kill you and then you just wipe the entire enemy team. And that's Spearbreaker in a nutshell. Then we have Earthshaker, another kind of one of these 4-position supports where the win rate is actually pretty decent, pretty high, and it's picked a lot. I was actually surprised because I haven't seen too much of this hero, but at high MMR pubs, it seems to be doing pretty well. And I think that's just overall a good melee support where you can get blink pretty early, pretty quickly. You can gank with this hero. Now, the laning stage is a little bit annoying. It's not that great, but if you can survive the laning stage, you can get your items, you can just kind of almost become that other core. Then we have Earth Spirit, another melee hero that does very similar things to these other melee guys, just kind of a little bit of a downgrade from the Tiny. And these guys aren't as popular as maybe they used to be, but it's still very good. And if you know how to play Earth Spirit and you're kind of a specialist in the hero, it's actually very, very good right now, despite some of the nerfs when it was like really good and it was mid. Then next in B tier, we start off with Dark Willow. This hero is pretty much middle of the road, good at some things, not good at others. Basically, it's very annoying with all the brambles and the shard and like the cursed crown and all that kind of stuff. And especially because you can put your ult on something like an axe or something like that wants to jump in and stun people, that can be really, really effective. But that is kind of matchup dependent. You need some hero like that just wants to jump in and kind of man fight somebody melee to make that be effective, or on your carry that wants to jump in. Because if you're, if you have like a drow on your team and you're just like putting the ult on the drow, that doesn't really do anything. Obviously, there's going to be other, heroes that want to go in, but you do have to kind of have that matchup dependent thing. And then you can go for the Ags. That is a little bit more of a grief than like a Hoodwink going for a Maelstrom, but it's definitely a possibility if you feel like you can get away with it. It just, that feels a little worse, where you'd rather get some of these other items, these more defensive items, because you can just be complete food if you don't get something else to like save yourself, like a Force Staff Glimmer or something like that. Then Morana, just kind of middle of the road again. Like, this hero isn't crazy good, but it's pretty good, and in pubs I think it's even better because you just press R and then you just win the game. But it doesn't need setup for the stun. It doesn't really transition as well into a carry from the 4 position as some of these other heroes like a Hoodwink, because I would compare a lot of these ranged 4s to Hoodwink. But yeah, so it's just not as good, like not as reliable of a stun as Hoodwink, not as transition, you're not transitioning into a carry as much. Yes, your ult is pretty good, but it's not a break like Hoodwink's is and all that kind of stuff. Not, you are survivable in a similar kind of way, so it's a very similar hero, just a downgrade. Then we have Disruptor, and we have Bane, and I would put this even like a Shadow Shaman. I would put these all kind of together, where these are really like 5 position heroes, and Shadow Shaman has kind of become more of a 4 position, but definitely Disruptor and Bane, where they are 5 positions that are just really, really good right now, picked a lot and very popular. And so because of that, they're so popular that they can play 4, because a lot of 5s and 4s, they can rotate positions. It just, for the most part, I try to keep them as separate as I can. But, if they are really good and popular in that patch, I'm going to put them in the different tier lists. And so that's pretty much what Disruptor and Bane have right now. Disruptor overall, just pretty good hero with the ultimate, with the the things that he does generally, but he doesn't scale with right clicks or anything like that, but he does have the Ags that if you get to that timing, you can be really effective. And so if you're picking him in the 4 position, you're kind of wanting to get to that Ags timing earlier, and that's the main thing you're doing in the 4 position with this hero. And so that's why this hero can be really good in that position. And then Bane overall, similar kind of thing. Actually, you can probably go for the Ags if you really want to, but he also can just like destroy lanes, honestly. Like, you can crush lanes with this hero with just putting Enfeeble on people, just nightmaring them, and obviously you trade extremely well with your brain sap, and so that's pretty good as well. Then Shadow Shaman, another like kind of 5 position that also plays 4. You just have that pushing power, that stun power. I think one of the main things that makes this hero pretty good right now, even though it is middle of the road, is the fact that they keep buffing the Hex to do amplified damage, which is kind of insane. Now usually, yes, you are going to like Hex people first, and then you're going to shackle them, and so when you shackle them, that's probably when your allies are going to be doing the most damage to them. But still, if you can get that Hex off at a random time in the middle of a team fight, and that enemy just takes infinity more damage, it feels like, and they just die, that's going to be very, very good. Then we have Pudge. 4 position or off lane are just the best positions for this hero right now. The thing about 4 is you're kind of going all in on just hooking people out of position. You're also going all in on that blink shard where you save people and then you blink out. That's like a huge part of the hero. And that's like the main thing you need to get good at on the hero if you want to be an effective 4 position. You don't want to like go for carry builds. You don't want to like run in. It's really all about saving and hooking people out of position. And then we have Marcy. This is kind of like the melee hero that's really transitioning into a carry from the 4 position. That's honestly why it's pretty good right now. This hero is on the upswing just in general. People are realizing that, hey, it's actually pretty good just like as a carry, a legitimate one. And then because the 4 position has become more of a carry role in that way with getting farm, yes, you're not buying Battle Fury, but you don't necessarily need to. You can go BKB like 2nd item after Solar Crest or whatever, or something like that, and you can just absolutely dominate games and kind of scale and become that 2nd carry, or 3rd carry, or 4th carry, whatever you were playing on the team at that point. Then Tusk, pretty good right now, not picked as much, but he's definitely viable. He's kind of one of these melee guys that's just not as good as these other melee guys. Kind of does all the same things he used to, but again, yeah, like I said, not as popular, but when he is picked in higher MMR pubs, he is winning a decent amount. Then I would say Phoenix is overall middle of the road. This hero's kind of, again, another one that's a little bit rare, but if you can get away with it, if you know how to play it, you can absolutely dominate games on this hero. And because games are going so late right now, like if you get to the late game with this hero and you can get some items items. You can even get like an Axe, you can even get a Refresher, you know, whatever it is, a Shiva's. That's kind of insane, which I also will mention Pudge too. Like even Pudge 4 position, you might be going Blink, but you also might go like Shiva's first. I've seen that happen too on things like Phoenix, on things like Pudge, these kind of melee 4 positions that do magic damage. That's definitely an option. Even like maybe a Gyrocopter could do that. And so that's one of the things too with these 4 positions, that it's an itemization thing that can happen too. You might not be going right click items like a Hoodwink or whatever, but you can go that Shiva's, which is insane. And then lastly for B tier, Clinks is actually kind of on the upswing with good 4 positions. It might be a little bit crazy to put him here. You know, you might be thinking, oh, this isn't warranted. Like maybe he should be C tier or something like that, if anything. But I actually think this hero is very, very good because of the way the meta has shifted. Like I keep saying, with the carry 4 positions, this hero is kind of insane and ridiculous, and you can literally go for first item Orchid and stomp the game. Now, you have to be careful. It's not like a super S tier, A tier hero, because it can be a little bit of a grief. You're not going to be as effective as a Nyx Assassin. You're running around invis, kind of ganking people, but this hero has a stun, blows people up a lot quicker. You do have to be a little bit careful about that. You have to make sure that you have other heroes on your team, like, you know, a Centaur, Slardar, or whatever, that want to go in. You know, maybe your mid's also a melee or something else that wants to go in a lot, so that you can kind of sit in the back lines. You can be the ganker and you can be that invis kind of shifty hero. So just make sure the matchups are good. Obviously, you're picking it as support, so you're picking it probably first, but still, it can be good in good matchup games and, you know, bad in other ones where it feels like, okay, we're a bunch of ranged heroes and I also have this Clinks running around. Like, what does he really do? Then next we have C tier, we have Keeper of the Light. Honestly, this hero is really good if you have a Medusa, not as good if you don't have a Medusa. Otherwise, I mean, you can get your items, you can play Coddle 4 position like it's a mid, but it's just not that good. It's not the best. You're going to have a harder time getting to those items and doing a lot of damage, where, like, you know, you're doing magic burst damage. You'd rather just pick Nyx or something like that, or Tiny, you know what I mean, because they're just able to burst people a lot earlier. They don't need a lot of items. This hero does farm fairly quickly, but again, you need kind of levels to do that, so it's a little bit awkward in that way. That's why it's definitely viable, but not that great. Then we have Clockwork, who is actually on the upswing, surprisingly. Like, this hero just feels like it's been dumpster tier for so long, but people have been trying to pick him in higher MMRs, and even in the Elite League, he was getting picked a decent amount and having, you know, some moderate success. It wasn't like he was completely ignored, so we'll just see what happens to this hero. I still don't really believe in it very much. I still think they're just kind of trying it out and seeing what happens, but there's nothing really special to say about this hero. They've been trying to buff it a ton, like giving it the ability to farm by doing more damage to creeps with the battery assault and all this kind of stuff. But it just doesn't feel like it's enough to really put the hero into the meta. So I'm putting it at C just to give it a little bit of a highlight, saying, hey, this hero's kind of decent right now, but honestly, you could maybe still put it in D, and that would make sense. Then Pugna. It's just this weird hero where it feels like it just goes in these ebbs and flows, where sometimes it's like S or A tier, really, really good. Then people just stop picking it, forget about it, don't really do anything with it anymore. It kind of goes back down the tier list, even if it gets small nerfs or whatever. And then, you know, here and there, a few months later, things go by and people are like, wait, Pugna's actually really good. It just heals you, it saves you, it does all these things, and then it starts getting picked again. Like, it's kind of this weird wave that happens. And yes, there are buffs and nerfs that do happen a little bit, but the hero hasn't really fundamentally changed that much in a year or so, and not even fundamentally in the first place. I think before it was like all about the ward, and that was really good at one time, maybe like I said, a year ago or so. But since then, it's kind of been consistent. It's all about healing people. It's all about, you know, giving people mana and just being really annoying with that save in the fight. And then you can be offensive sometimes as well. Then we have Snapfire. I really like this hero. This is personally one of my favorite support heroes, and that's really because you have so many options for farming. You have your Scatter Blast, which is just going to clear through waves extremely fast, especially once you get your talent where you do more damage. And then you can also have your Cookie, which just clears through waves without you having to commit your hero at all. Like, you can literally just cookie the range creep and you just clear through an entire wave. It's awesome. It feels really good on the hero. So you're getting a ton of farm, and yes, you're not scaling that well because you're not really building right clicks as a support on this hero, but if you do get to 25, your ult still does a lot of damage. It's kind of insane. Even though it's magic damage at that late point, it still is pretty good. If you know how to use Ags, you can use it to effectiveness, and like honestly win games with that initiation, but you do have to be careful because it can be grief sometimes. Or maybe you want to grief, you just want to shoot your allies into the fountain. You know, you can do that as well. But I think Snapfire is really good. I mean, with the win rate and pick rates and stuff, you might say it's D tier. I would kind of say maybe, or I kind of agree with that. But I just like how the hero plays in general. It just kind of gives you a little bit of everything. That's why it's been so popular for so long, and was like a top tier support for many, many years. Then we have Grimstroke. This hero has come back into the meta ever since they like made the made its spells actually good. Like the stun, you can actually click it whenever you want, and it doesn't take forever anymore. Like it's just way better now, but it's still not good enough, especially as a 4 position, because you don't really need items. Like a lot of these other 4 positions, like I said, transitioning into carries, like they have some really good item that makes them really OP. And yes, this hero can get an Ags, and that can be good, but it is kind of matchup dependent, and even so, that's kind of not like a huge game-turning ult like maybe a Disruptor has. Like you really just do everything you need to do with your spells, just leveling up, and then maybe getting a few defensive items. Then we have Zeus. This is kind of like the magic damage carry from the 4 position. You can definitely pick it. It is a little bit of a grief at times, but it's definitely possible. It's definitely viable. You just have to be careful. I wouldn't pick this every single game, but Zeus does what Zeus does. Then Muerta, I'm putting this hero up here because I think a lot of people have forgotten it. Yes, they did nerf its laning stage. They nerfed some of its early spells, but you can play this hero now as a discount hoodwink and still go carry and still win the game from the 4 position. That is definitely viable. It's just maybe not as good as it once was. Yes, the win rate and everything maybe tells you to put it in D tier. And again, that's kind of the theme here for C tier. Some of these heroes you could say are lower, but then I would have like a billion people in D tier. And I really think these heroes are more viable in a lot of ways than a lot of the D tier heroes. Then we have Weaver. I'm just putting this guy up here because, again, a decent carry. That's not 100% grief in the 4 position. And for a long time, this hero was actually played as a legitimate support when the Swarm was really good. And the Swarm is still pretty good. It's just that the reason it's been kind of coming back into the meta as a carry and stuff is because they're buffing the Geminate attack. But the Swarm is still decent. Like, you can still own people with the Swarm and be very annoying, hard to deal with, a really annoying support that just runs around and kills the other supports and stuff like that. And then lastly, for viable supports, we have Silencer. And Silencer is kind of a weird one. I would almost put him F tier or in the 5 position list exclusively, but people are kind of picking him. There's like a theoretical build where you can get more of that right click damage, kind of go for more of that carry build. And I think that's definitely potential if we see some changes with the hero or something like that. But I still think it's a little bit grief. Like, I wouldn't pick it in very many games, although it's definitely possible and definitely viable in some small percentage of games. Then we have Venthyr, probably just more of a 5 position right now, not really a 4 position, because it just doesn't feel great to have a 4 position Venthyr, because what are you really buying on this hero? Like, you, again, are kind of like the Grimstroke in that you just have your spells, and that's really all you need. Like, you're going to buy a 4 staff, okay, but that's fine. But otherwise, you're really just using your spells, and that's all. And you can do that from the 5 position, and you can win lanes in the 5 position, and you're arranged. Like, that's all you need. So if you're going to go straight for, like, getting items, then maybe you can play it as an off lane, which is a little more viable, but I just don't love it as a 4 right now. Venge, you can play it as a 4 because you want to get that Ags, and that's still decent. It's still viable, but not great. It just doesn't feel great to have this Venge running around trying to farm an Ags at the 4 position, because like these other heroes that farm, like, you know, or try to get carry items or big items, like a Clinks, like they have better opportunities to go around and actually kill people. Where this hero, like, if you're farming, you're trying to get an Ags, like that's not really something you're going to be going for straight away. You're going Solar Crest first anyway, and then like you want to be participating in fights. It just feels like you're another 5 position, and that's not what we want from our 4s these days. Then Skywrath Mage is the worst version of all these magic damage dealers. Like, he's just all in on only magic damage and a silence, and that just sucks. You have to get Atos, and like you're getting Atos, but then you don't like the Maelstrom because you don't right click, and so that just feels awkward and bad. Then I would put Io and Enchantress kind of in the same league, where these are kind of more 5 positions in general anyway. You can pick them if you're a specialist and you know what you're doing, but overall they're not great as the 4 position because they kind of just do the things they do. And yes, Enchantress can get items, but it gets items in the same way from the 5 position, so just pick it 5 and it's not grief there anyway. Then I think for the next like huge batch of heroes we have, here's like a carry from the 4 position, but not good. Like, it's just something that's borderline grief. Same thing with Wind Ranger, kind of like carry from the 4 position, but still borderline grief. Doom, like you get a Doom, that's cool in the 4 position, but it might be a little bit grief because you're kind of just farming. Same thing with Dawnbreaker. This feels a little bit more like a support, but it's just really bad right now. Kind of a melee hero that's just like the worst of the melee hero supports. And then same thing with Primal Beast, even same thing with Mars. Like, you have team fight, team control with this. You have some tankiness. This is definitely viable. I've picked, you know, a Mars before in the 4 position. That seems okay. So that's why I'm putting it here. But again, the worst of all the, you know, melee 4s you can pick, these are probably the worst ones. Then finally, F tier, we have Invoker, not really a viable support, even though people try to force it. Dazzle's completely dead. This hero's gone, dead, especially as even a mid, it's dead, and now as a support, it's definitely dead. Lena, and Quap are dead as supports. Monkey is not a support right now. He just feels really bad as a support. Enigma is pretty much dead as a support. I mean, I'm surprised Enigma's trying to make a comeback, but I just don't think it's viable as a support right now. And then Sniper, if anything, it's a mid or maybe a carry, not a support. Like, I could almost remove this hero because it's been so long since people were spamming the Ags build. But people are probably going to try to do support Sniper because, you know, they're going to try to buy Phylactery and Conda and stuff like that, but just that doesn't feel good as a support right now. So that is my 4-position tier list for patch 7.35D. As always, guys, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.